One of the things that I like to say that when people vote for you and when they elect you, they want you to be consequential. They just don't want you to come down here and just kind of collect a salary. They want you in the game, and I must say that Councilman Kenney has been in the game, sometimes to his detriment, been willing to say what needed to be said, regardless of who he rubs the wrong way. And I must say that has happened relatively frequently. But it was all based on his passion for the job and passion for the city. And I just want to say, Jim, that having that opportunity over the years is now one of the really senior members being here. To be able to talk to you about your perspective on different issues as they come up and sitting in your office, either in your office or my office, kind of bouncing things off of you since I've been the council president has been very important for me, very important for the city. I'm going to miss that. I will be calling you every now and then, although you will no longer be on the payroll. They ask for your advice for some things, but your knowledge of government, your institutional knowledge will be missed in this body, and I want to thank you so much on behalf of the citizens that I represent in the 5th Council District for all the things you've done. What I like to do now is to bend the rules a little bit and use some councilmatic prerogative. Is it okay with you, Majority Leader Jones? I'd like to ask my good friend to come up and speak from the podium about his
All right. No, I'm not going up there. No, I'm not going up there. I'm right here. No, I'm good. No, I'm good. Oh, man, don't make me go up there. I don't want to go up there. Come on. Got me all out of. I don't know where anything works up here. That's the problem. My light's not on. I'm too high up. Can you hear me well? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, it's really nice to be able to attend your funeral while you're alive, for good or for ill. And a lot of it, what I was going to say has been said, but I won't repeat it, but I'll kind of build on it. I was 32 years old when I came into this room 23 years ago. And Marianne Tasco was absolutely correct. I knew everything. I had an answer for all the city's problems, and I was going to fix the world and blah, 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 blah. And you know when you're 14, 15 years old and you think your parents are really dumb, and the older you get, the smarter they get, and at some point in time you realize how smart your parents really were in the first place? Well, that's been my journey through this body and through this place. I've had the opportunity to work with 3 different council presidents over my years. Council President Street, who was a unique individual unto himself. I remember he said to me one time, and he was very smart, had a grasp of all the knowledge of all the issues he was facing. But he said to me one time, because we used to have our differences, and he said, and I'm going to try to do my John Street impersonation. Councilman, you're holding me up. You know what you need, Councilman? You need 9 votes to pass any piece of legislation. And I learned that lesson on more than one occasion. Council President Verna was one of the nicest, classiest, inclusionary people that I've ever had a pleasure to serve within council. And she just carried herself with dignity and class and treated everybody the same and included everybody's opinions. And Council President Clark, you've been here a short time, but you're walking in those shoes at the same time. You have the knowledge of John Street and the issues, and you have the class and dignity of Anna Verna, and you're moving forward in that same mold. And I'm so proud of what the president that you've become and working with you to help you be there. Before I talk about some of my colleagues, and we don't have time, I guess, to talk about everybody, but I would like my staff to stand. I know, but don't clap for anybody yet. Don't clap for anybody yet. I'd like my staff to stand. And they're such a good staff that I don't have to tell everybody who their names are. And I would also like every other council staff member in this room that's sitting to stand, or that's standing to at least wave your hand and acknowledge that you're here. Everyone on this floor today and everyone who's ever served in this body owes everything that we are and everything that we're portrayed to be and everything we accomplish to all the folks that are standing, whether it's... Whether it's your own personal staff, whether it's tech staff, whether it's the sergeant at arms who work their tails off all the time, we're nothing without them. We know how much we appreciate them, but I want the public to understand how important they are as public servants and that they earn their money every day and they give their all every day for the people of the city. So I thank them from the bottom of my heart as I stand here today. I'd also like to talk about a couple of my colleagues, and Councilwoman Tasco brought up some issues, and so did Councilwoman Blackwell. I had the distinct privilege of being taken to the woodshed on the same day by Augusta Alexander Clark and Joan Krajewski. One with her hand on my ear, and the other with her foot on my butt. And accompanying them was their partner in crime was Councilwoman Tasco, who is here. The two of those have gone on. I miss them dearly. I hope they're looking down. And I know Joni's saying, "Hey, Jim Kenney, why don't you smile a little more?" And Councilwoman Tasco is here to tell her that I can thank her personally for all that she's done for me, for the educational progress that I've made as a person, as a legislator, as a public servant. I thank all of you. My dear friend and probably the best councilman, one of the best council people ever served in this body, and certainly the best council member in the 1st District. Where is Frank DeChico? He's got to be around here somewhere. I know he's in it. I know. Yeah, thank you. You know, Frank, thanks for all your friendship and all your guidance and all your loyalty. It's been just a wonderful time with you, and your district is in just wonderful hands from a guy that's kind of like the same style as you. You Italian guys are very smooth. It's like, you know, the Irish guys are rough and they get mad. The Italian guys are very smooth. Hey, don't worry about it. They bring flowers yeah, thank you very much. Councilman O'Neill, longest serving member in this council, carries the GOP standard with dignity and decency and contributes to every issue that we've dealt with. You know, you look at Washington and Harrisburg and some of the issues they're dealing with party differences. He represents, and the other members that are sitting there with him represent what the GOP that I love, the GOP that I respected. And I think that he's done that all the time as a leader in this body. And I had the pleasure of working with you all these years. I'd just like to say a word about a former colleague of mine who's now the mayor of the city of Philadelphia, councilman and now Mayor Michael Nutter. Again, ups and downs, ins and outs. We've had our issues both in this room and with others here and the second floor. Let us not forget that in 2009, 2010, 2011, the waves of the economic meltdown in this country and in this world could have taken this ship of state and sunk it, and it didn't. And it didn't because of the hard decisions he had to make that were not popular and the hard decisions we had to make to support him in doing it. He's accomplished a lot of things as mayor, and I'll talk maybe one or two about them later on. But let's not forget that this city was at the precipice as it was back in 1991 and 92, and this mayor brought it back from the brink, and I think he deserves a round of applause for that work. And the press. Hi, folks. You know, I can tell you for sure that over 23 years of my experience with every single one of you, those who are sitting at that table and those who are no longer here, covering somewhere else or working somewhere else, the only two things I could say about you, describing you as professional and fair. And I think that a journalist being described as professional and fair is probably the highest compliment that anyone can give them. And I want to thank you for being professional and fair and for being, you know, knowledgeable and doing your research, and both electronic media and the print media. Thank you for your work. We do appreciate it, even sometimes we get a little mad and maybe we block you on Twitter, Mr. Kirkstrom. There's been some general guiding principles that I've tried to deal with over my years, and one is, don't ever be afraid to take an unpopular position because you think it's unpopular. When you know in your heart it's right. And you know in the beginning when you take the position, it's going to be a little rough. You know, when you stand up in the 1990s for domestic partnerships in the city of Philadelphia for city employees, and you're standing up against, you know, institutions that are totally against it, it's a hard thing to do. But in the end, as time goes on and you realize we're in the era that we are now, you were right back then, we were right back then. And you have to stick to your guns, and you know when you have to, and you do it. You know, always defend the underdog. Never let bullies overcome. And I want to thank Janie Blackwell for that. You have taught me that. You have stood up, and I watched you do it, and you taught me that people who are down and out and on the street And having bad times are human beings that deserve dignity and respect. And learning that from you is one of the most greatest lessons I've ever learned. Thank you. I think government should maximize everyone's potential. Government should be in a position where it allows people to just do the things they can do best and maximize the persons they can be. And I think that's something I've always stood for. And there's no such thing as economic prosperity that doesn't include economic prosperity for every single citizen in this town. And thank you, Wilson Good, for doing that every day. You taught me that every day. The accomplishments I guess I'm most proud of in this short time that we have to talk is sensible immigration policy as it relates to city government, ending ICE holds and treating immigrants and other newcomers who are just coming here as those ravaged Irish came in the 1840s and 50s for a better life. And I thank Maria Quinones-Sanchez for being my partner in standing up and stopping that ability or that desire for us as a city government to hold someone in jail without a warrant while the federal government decides what they want to do with them. And we don't do that anymore, and I'm proud to have stood by her in doing that. I dropped my glasses one more time on leaving. No one has all the answers to schools. No one has all the answers to schools. But I'm proud this body on many occasions had the courage to take tough votes to keep our schools open when they were on the brink of closing, or closing for half a year, or closing for half a day, or reducing the number of days a week the kids could go to school. In an election year, we did hard votes to keep those schools open. I don't know what the answer is coming from Harrisburg, but I honestly think that waiting for Superman to fly in from Harrisburg is not going to be an option for us in the coming years, and we got to figure out a way going forward how we maximize our government services, maximize revenue, maximize the way we do things with our schools to make every school a centerpiece for our neighborhoods so that people make it the center of town. And I think we can do that on our own. We need help from Harrisburg. We need help from Washington. But I will tell you, we are on our own for a while, and we got to get used to doing that, and we got to work together to make that happen. And I want to thank Councilman Michael Nutter. And I know we've had our difficulties in dealing with this issue and getting used to all the new rules, but good government reforms, ethics board, campaign finance reform, it was hard getting used to it. When I voted for that campaign finance reform, that first election I ran afterwards, I was lost. Poor Debbie was dealing with requests from the ethics board every 2 seconds. But in the end, it was a good way to go, and we shouldn't go back. I think we need to go forward, we need to build on it, and Michael Nutter was primarily responsible for having that happen. My support in the LGBTQ, we get a new letter like every year, it's awesome. LGBTQ rights, transgender health care, dignity, decency. This city was voted #1 LGBT-friendly city in the country, and we beat San Francisco, and that's awesome. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Angel Ortiz and the late David Cohen for their work in that effort, because they educated me in that regard. I mean, a white Irish Catholic guy from South Philly didn't know a thing about gay rights or the things that LGBT people were going through in this town and in this country, and they helped school me in that regard. And finally, the last thing that I'm very proud of is the criminalization of marijuana possession. Now, this issue was never, ever about marijuana. It had nothing to do with marijuana. It had to do with criminal records. It had to do with a young person in our town who stopped for whatever reason, and we can talk about stop and frisk or some of the other stuff that goes on. A young person in our town being stopped for something that's a stupid thing for them to do. I'm not advocating it. But there's no reason why a person 19, 20 years old should have to live the rest of their life with a criminal record that keeps them from going into the military, getting financial aid, getting a job, and now we expect them to be upstanding, decent, contributing people when we saddle them with a criminal record. I am very, very proud to say that since we've imposed this bill with the cooperation of the administration and with the police department, the last month, 2 months, we are down 90% arrests, 90% less arrests. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about my personal upbringing and my personal formation. Councilman O'Neill is absolutely right. The Jesuit, and Councilman Greenlee, you know it, the Jesuits they just formed you. They just molded your psyche, your attitude. It's kind of a crazy process, but when you come out at the end as a senior, you really know that you cannot be truly happy no matter what you accomplish, no matter what you accumulate, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much bling you acquire. You're never truly happy unless you're serving someone else. Unless you are helping someone else get their problem solved, get their issues dealt with, you are never, ever truly happy. And once you figure that out, God, that makes so much sense. It was so simple that it's so wonderful and beautiful. And finally, before the Jesuits, and this is how I'll conclude, before the Jesuits, my parents, my mom was a homemaker, and she always worked outside the home. She always had a second job. She worked at a bank. She worked at the Inquirer in the ad department. She took in typing. She always did something else. My dad also had second jobs. He worked as an usher at the Spectrum. We all remember the Spectrum, and he delivered flowers on the weekends for funerals and weddings and the like. But my father's real job and his real profession was a firefighter. And when you grow up, and he identified himself as a firefighter, and he's 79 years old now, and he's still, if you ask him, what are you? I'm a firefighter. It's part of what you are, and it's part of what your family is. And when you're a kid growing up in South Philly, and my dad would take us to firehouses in the neighborhood or whatever, and you're 7, 8 years old, and you're climbing on equipment and climbing on apparatus, and you're sitting in the cab, driving the car, and you're putting your boots on, and you got your helmet on, and you say, my God, my dad's got the greatest job in the world. And if you think about public service, and you think about firefighters and police officers, prison guards, sheriffs, paramedics, people who are the emblematic example of public service, because you know why? They will lose their life for you. And in my career, I have tried to take on that persona, take on that attitude about public service, and I have never been in a situation where I have to be as brave or as selfless as those individuals are, because I've never run into a burning building. I've never chased anybody up a dark alley. I've never done those things and had to worry about what my safety was like in this body. But I'll tell you one thing about a personal story. I lived in a little row house in South Philly on Cantrell Street, 300 block. We had like 70 houses, no trees. It was like this typical urban little street. And firefighters, as you know, work 4 days on, 4 days off. I don't know if they did then, I don't know if they do now. 2 days on, 2 days day work, 2 days night work. The night work father shift, the next morning, he'd come home sometime in the morning after the shift, and you would wake up in bed, and you would smell this unmistakable smell of burnt rubber, wood. It was terrible. And you lay in bed and you smelt that. But you also knew your dad was home, because he would take off his running clothes and he'd throw them down the cellar steps to get washed. That was a kind of a thing that was very, very reassuring, that you knew your father had come home. As we know, as elected officials over the years, a lot of people didn't come home, and we've been to those funerals, and we've seen those families suffering, and we've seen the grief. But they still do what they do based on their public service and their desire to serve us. And I think that if we dedicate ourselves, we're not running into burning buildings or cutting people out of cars, but let's dedicate ourselves to that type and attitude of public service. And I think in the end, we'll all have a better city, and we'll all go forward together. I just want to say finally, before I walk out of here, hopefully not for the last time, I want to tell you all here assembled, all my colleagues, I love you. I really do. I just love you, and I'll miss you. And I'll get out of here before I do something I shouldn't do. So good luck, and thank you all.